Welcome to Salcedo Paranormal. It is Thursday, January 26th, 2023, and tonight we will be covering comic books and the paranormal. As always, you can find all the links to the show, the episodes of the show, along with links to social media and other ways to contact me at the podcast page, and that is salcedoparanormal.podbean.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.podbean.com. Always happy to hear from you all, whether you have comments or questions or topic suggestions, and or if you have stories of paranormal experiences, whether they're your own or from others that you trust. Happy to share those either by reading them or having you join me on the show to talk about them. And so, of course, whenever we do these comic book shows, I don't do them alone. So I want to welcome Derek, the Night Stalker, onto the show.
Hey, James. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
No problem. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear. How about me?
Good. I'm glad that's working okay. As long as I don't bump into anything again.
No, so far, so good.
All right. So, so we put this story a little while back, and you all will see why I was interested in it once we get going. But if you want to, Derek, first tell them a little about yourself, if you want to, and then just the story as well.
Yeah. I'm just Derek. I'm the Night Stalker. I stalk shelves overnight and just listen to shows, and I get to call in to James' show and Triple Minds and everything. You guys know me. I'll talk about myself. But we did the the X-Men stories and the Marvel stories and stories that we were both more familiar with, and kind of crescendoed it in what we were calling the end of our phase one with Avengers versus X-Men. And now, so this is a kind of an experiment tonight where we're going off the beaten path. I had a stack of 5 different Image comics that I haven't read. I really didn't even know what they were about. I bought them 3 years ago. I forgot. And we just read the backs of them, and you picked one that was interesting to you. And there's no notes online, so I just took some notes. Too many notes, because this is a well-received story. It's I didn't know what was going to be important in it. I didn't know what was going to matter symbol-wise, so I didn't want to miss anything that was going to be important in the notes. So it's going to be an experiment tonight. I'm going to try to revel through it as quick as we can. But I don't know if you want any more context for the story first before you dive into it, or what do you got? But what do you think?
Well, the thing that based on the back of the book, it talks about this building that would appear and disappear and reappear.
Yeah.
And that is something that you will find in stories of people's experiences.
Yeah.
Where they'll see buildings, a lot of times it's older buildings, when they'll go to a place, but then when they go back another time, they won't be there. And it's just the span of time is just way too short for it to have been completely destroyed without any trace of it being got or being there before. And so that's what I was drawn to this one for, is this idea of this building that just is there but not there, but there again. And so there was just that connection to kind of the real world, whatever is going on out here.
Yeah, and that's very interesting on its own. What is going on with that? Is that is somebody abducting the house? Is the house somehow falling into a portal? Are you traveling through some kind of portal, seeing another realm where a house is, and then it's not there when you go back another time, or what's going on there? But that plays into a little bit in the story, not so much. Again, I didn't know what to expect. I was taking notes as I was reading it for the first time, and at the end of it, it plays I want to keep reading. It plays like a pilot episode to a series, to a intense mini series, whatever. It's very symbolic, but it's very weird. I'm going to say that going into it. It's pretty weird. It's interesting though.
And just real quick, this does seem like a horror story.
It's horror for sure. Yeah.
So but not for everyone that notices.
Not overly, and I know to be cognizant of that. So I curated my notes as best I could to not be too graphic or whatever.
No
and then so the writer is Jeff Lemire. I think it's Lemire. It might be Lemire, but he's a big Marvel and DC guy. He wrote for Green Arrow and Justice League Dark for DC, and he wrote Hawkeye and X-Men. He was big during like the all new, all different Marvel era. He basically like was like one of the main guys during that era of Marvel, like 2016 range. And he wrote Sweet Tooth, which is a show on Netflix from a few years ago about like the hybrids and like the virus, whatever. Which is pretty good. So he's a big guy. And this book was like all over the cover. It was just like a bunch of different like best book of the year, book of 2018. This book is amazing. Blah 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 blah. So I was going in with high expectations. But do you want to get started? Again, this is an experiment. We'll see how this goes. Please be patient, everyone. But should be fun.
Yeah, well, and I want to thank Derek also for doing all that because again, he said we always look for summaries of these books, and most of the time we can find them, but sometimes every once in a while you come across one that's just not there.
It's getting harder and harder, you know. So like it was like the ones when we're doing like the Phoenix Saga, it's kind of these like more classic events. It was kind of easier to find, but it's getting more sparse. Like more I'm looking around, and it's like there needs to be like a cliffnotes.com for comics, which doesn't exist. So like as I'm writing this, I'm like, if I don't cram too bad, if I like pace it out in like after a few episodes, we can start our own comicscliffnotes.com with these. You know what I mean? We'll see. We'll see. But and again, like we don't have any mythology going into like so like nothing to like really wrap our hands around in the story. So I wanted to like I want to go through the notes as quick as I can, but I didn't know like what was going to be important or like what was going to be something that we needed later because it's like a suspenseful mystery story. So I didn't know what was going to be like important plot points, you know.
And this is definitely just a summary, so everyone, if it sounds at all interesting to you, definitely go check out the comic itself. Yeah. And we can
it's a pretty dense summary is what I'm trying to say. I'm just gonna try to get through it as quick as I can. But and it gets like I get obviously towards the end of it quicker. But all right, here we go. So and I posted a few pictures if you're in the chat. Like the first one is the Black Barn itself, and then the two main characters is the second picture and the third picture. So here we go. So it opens up on a guy in a mask looking for something in what looks like a garbage dump. He like finds this like piece of a stick or something. We're not really sure what it is. He puts it in a jar and like files it. And then we're back in his apartment and you see a bunch of jars and like with all the sticks in them, different kind of like trash with dates on it. He like sits down in his bed, takes his jacket off, and he's like still wearing the mask. And he says like the Our Father, so that's the prayer. And boom, opening titles. So the mask thing, as soon as I see the mask, I'm like, oh no, it's just gonna be a virus story. I don't want a virus story, and it's not that. So don't worry about that. So then, story opens. We open up on a car driving in a road in a huge cornfield. The man driving, seemingly while drinking, appears to be a priest. Flashes back on him getting the assignment to come to Gideon Falls. It's a quote quiet town, and their pastor just died, so they need a new one. He doesn't want to go. He said the whole reason he came back to where he was because he had lost his way. The bishop responds, well, you found it, and it leads to Gideon Falls. So he pulls up to a rundown church, and he uses the Lord's name in vain to express like his disgust. So you can tell, like, we're not dealing with, he's drinking, he's swearing, like, he's not a regular priest, basically. And someone calls from behind him, Father Wilfred, so we found out his name. And a lot of the stuff, like, it's tough to keep the notes going because it, like, lays out important information. Like, I don't find out some of these like main characters' names until like the last issue of the thing, you know. So, like, you know, yeah. So then we meet Jean Tremblay, who's like the head of the Catholic Women's League and the chair of the parish. Showing around the rectory of where he's gonna be living, his apartment. And he says that she says the previous tenants' belongings are all still there. He asks how she died, and she's too upset to talk about it. And then we cut to what looks like a therapy session with the man in the mask is talking about he's starting to believe that evil is not an abstract idea, but it's a literal person. And the doctor asks him if this is about the garbage again. And he says his obsession, or she says his obsession with it is a disease. He says it's not, and that he thought the trash was just random, but now he's seeing patterns in it. He's cross-referencing things. He catalogs to different places. He sees things he's looking for are coming from a specific weird source, and it's not all random. So, like, he's at a therapy session talking to this therapist, saying that like the trash I'm finding in the dump is like from this one particular. It's like this random trash is like leading me to something. So she thinks he's crazy, you know. She says the only reason that he's let out of the hospital is that she thought this all passed. And if they weren't so crowded at the hospital, that he'd be back there right now. She says people can find meaning in anything if they try hard enough, and it doesn't make it real. They're just fantasies. And at any point, please cut me off. I'll just keep rambling. But we cut to Father Fred being woken up by someone. This like red specter, this red person. And he asks if it's Father Tom. And the man runs out, and the Father Fred chases them out into these cornfields. And the panels cut back and forth with him looking for this red man. And then you can hear the masked man, Norton, writing in his journal. He says he's close in his mission. This is the journal. Dr. Zhu doesn't believe him, but she just doesn't understand yet. He says he believes he's really close to a breakthrough. He likes Dr. Zhu because she's the only one that listens to him, even though she doesn't believe him. And he contemplates telling her what he's really up to. He says he's figured out what's connecting the items he's been finding in these back alleys and gutters, that it came to him in a dream or in a vision. It is the Black Barn. And it's a huge red splash page that I posted in the chat. He doesn't know what it means.
Guess on something here.
Yeah,
those
please.
Sticks, those pieces.
Yeah.
Are they part of that barn?
Oh, man. You're good, James. This is one of my favorite parts about, remember when we did the Midnight Mass thing? And
yeah.
you were guessing these things so early in the show, or like, because from not watching it, it was pretty impressive. So, we'll get there. Not exactly, but we'll see. Yes and no, we'll see. But he doesn't know what it means, but he knows that it's bad. This is bad. So this vision is terrifying. He like curses God for choosing him to carry this burden of this overwhelming knowledge. So it's almost this like Lovecraftian thing where he's like driven crazy by this like some knowledge he can't even wrap his head around. And as we see these panels, Norton says that he has seen in a vision that he's not alone in this burden anymore, and that there's someone else. And the issue ends. So we're assuming that he means Father Fred. That's issue 1. So I need a drink. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. The dream aspect, of course, is always amazing. We talk about that all the time. Just the ways dreams seem to be just a connection or a nexus between all kinds of paranormal things, out of body, possibly parallel, alternate universe things.
Yeah,
A couple of experiences I had with that. Just all kinds of things. Spirit, the afterlife, spirit world.
Yeah,
kind of thing. So, yeah,
and potentially a way for like cosmic forces, like the Lovecraft way, but a way for like cosmic forces or like entities or consciousnesses to like infiltrate our reality, or like make contact, or give information, or like somehow like infiltrate like through the mind of people. And in some cases, like in the story or Lovecraft, it drives them mad potentially, or they need to be mad in order to receive the information in the first place. But
a lot of Lovecraft stories, the characters are just, they can barely handle everything that they're figuring out or finding out, if they can handle it at all.
Exactly. All right, so issue 2 starts with the doctor and Norton walking through a park. She compliments him for not giving in to his temptations to sort through all the trash that's around on the bench. She says he has to engage with real life and not his fantasies anymore. But he checks the trash anyways. After a false alarm, he decides to tell the doctor about the Black Barn. We cut back to Father Fred, who's being interrogated by the police. He says there's a body found near the. He says there's a body found near the. Did I miss that part? So sorry. The issue ends with these panels going back and forth, and as Norton is having this vision, he's saying he's not the only one burned anymore. It's Father Fred coming up to this body with like something in its chest, basically. So now we cut to Father Fred being interrogated by the police. Says the body was found near the barn, but the cops say the barn doesn't exist. There's only cornfields there. He says, "You have to believe me. I would never do this." They're suspicious because he's a new guy that just rolled into town. But he angrily says he told them everything. Father Tom came to his room, and he followed him out to the body. But the police say Tom had been dead for 2 weeks. He drowned, and they found him washed up in the creek. So we finally find out how he died. And being drowned in a creek and washing up in a creek is like connects to like all kinds of just ritual weirdness and just real life weird ritual cult murders and stuff. And that's a whole rabbit hole on its own. But she asks if he's been drinking and reveals that she knows that he's been kicked out of 2 parishes for drinking, disorderly conduct, and assault. The interrogation is interrupted with word of another dead body being found. We cut back to Norton, who's coming home and discovers Norton's the guy in the mask. So we cut back to Norton, who's coming home and discovers his apartment broken into and his stuff everywhere. His jars are empty, and we see something missing from his hangers. At this point, I'm under the assumption, as the reader, that like the object in the chest of the body that Father Fred found was one of the items stolen. But the art is like in a style that you can't really tell. It's like dark and shadowy, and like it's evocative. You can't. It's like laying the pieces out, but you can't really tell right away what it is. Which is tough to like make notes for, honestly.
Yeah.
Then we're back at the police station. Father Fred calls the bishop asking for help. It's like the guy who sent him there. He needs a lawyer, some way to get out of Gideon Falls. Like he wants to get out of Gideon Falls in general. The bishop says no, basically kind of like dismissing him. And he says he won't need a lawyer if he didn't murder the people. And he says God's plan is clear now, and that Gideon Falls needs Fred. The vibe is very creepy, and he's like leaving Fred out to dry, basically. And Fred's like shocked. I was like, "What the hell's going on?" It's a real like Wicker Man vibe, where it's just bizarre. And then the officer guarding, huh?
That bishop is something else.
It's I don't something weird going on with him. The officer guarding him tells him he believes him and that he should meet Dr. Sutton when he gets out of there. But he couldn't say more than that, or he'd get in trouble if he got caught. And we don't know about who. And we cut back to Dr. Zoo's office, the therapist, where Norton barges in, demanding help while she has another patient, and she's like really mad about that. But he's like, "It's serious. They broke in. They took all my stuff." And she dismisses him as being paranoid. And he goes, "No. They took my stuff, nails, a scalpel, a scalpel, which is I think one of the items in the chest. But again, it's kind of tough to tell." She doesn't believe him. Wants to take him back to the hospital, but he's like, "What do you like? I'm telling you the truth. You're the only one I trust." And he barges out of there before she can get him. We cut back to the police driving into the woods to try to find this body they just found out about. It's revealed that it's Father Tom, but they're like, "How? He died weeks ago. We got the body weeks ago." And they're like, "It looks like Father Fred was telling the truth, but they don't know how this is going on." And sticking in the palm of the hand of Father Tom was this like nail that was stolen out of the Norton's apartment.
Okay.
We cut to Dr. Zoo, and again, this is if it sounds complicated, it's because it is. Like this is it's pretty much exactly how I was reading it. So you're
Leave it to me to put the complicated one. I apologize.
no, I had no idea. It's I just don't want it to be not enjoyable for the listener. But like if you don't know what's going on, it's because I didn't know what was happening either. But it kind of all falls into place. So we cut back to Dr. Zoo on the phone, talking to another doctor, saying that she feels bad for Norton. She's on her cell phone, getting into her car. And suddenly she like drops her phone, and like falls to the ground. And the panel flashes to her on the ground, but in front of her is the black barn. She has like, a vision of the black barn that Norton sees, and the issue ends. And then, any thoughts on that before I get going?
So it's not even necessarily this place is necessarily appearing or disappearing in a real place. It's this visions of this place.
Yeah, we have
that's amazing.
it's weird. Yeah, so we have potentially this person who's clinically insane in this case, according to like medical science, seeing visions of a red barn, and then we have people turning up murdered. The most recent murdered person was supposed to be dead 2 weeks ago. They'd already found the body 2 weeks ago, and just kind of the plot thickens, and just information is kind of slowly being leaked out, and somebody is like knows something. Because Father Fred's been sent to this doctor mysteriously, but he doesn't know why. So, issue 3 starts. Father Fred is struggling to write his first sermon when the cop enters the room. She tells him again, like I don't know. I keep calling it the cop, but like I don't know her name until it ends up being Carla, but I don't know that till like the last issue. But she tells him that Father Tom was the killer, and so it's like basically what you said was true, Father Fred, but like he notices that she doesn't believe him at all. She asks him if he can be trusted, and that the town is tight knit, and they trust the church and the priest as a given. But because of his past, she's wondering if he can be trusted. He doesn't do a good job of reassuring her at all, and says like, "See you in church tomorrow." And she's like, "That's not really my style." We cut to Norton saying that he has to defend himself now. People broke in and took his precious stuff, so he's setting up kind of like Home Alone traps around the house, which might be one of those pictures in there. I'm not sure. And then Dr. Zhu knocks on the door. She seems kind of creeped out by this like weird makeshift lab he has with like all just news articles and weird drawings and traps now set all over the place. And he's just this crazy person. But she's trying to like rationalize what had happened and confesses to him that she saw the black barn. So then we cut back, and then again, it's tough because it's cutting back and forth every like other panel from Norton to Father Fred. But we cut back to Father Fred delivering his sermon. If anyone is in the chat being like, "Boo, this sucks," just like let me know and I'll stop. But we cut to Father Fred delivering his sermon. We see that he's nothing written down. He's like 2 lines crossed out, and he just basically gets up there and tells everyone he doesn't know what's happening. He doesn't know why like God let it happen, but they need to like come together as a community. Outside the church, he meets a man named Joe and his wife lives on a farm near the church. He tells Father Fred to stop by. Like he's the bus driver who's been there for 20 years apparently. He tells Father Fred to stop by and check out the farm they have, and that they'd love to have him. And seemingly like lights up a joint and like tries to pass it to the pastor, and then but he says no. He just like walks away creepily. And then we cut back to Norton and Dr. Zhu, and he's blown away that she said that he saw it. So he like, and she says that she saw it for real, not in a dream. Like she saw it and what she was awake, you know.
Right.
And she says that she also saw this dark figure. All she could see was his smile, and we see this picture of this like red grinning man or smiling man that like that kind of like the cryptid. It looks very much like it.
Yeah.
And then Norton is excited because like she finally believes him, but she says she doesn't know what to believe, and shared psychosis has never been proven before. She says she has to take him back to the hospital. He says he won't because she's seen it now, and deep down she knows it's real. We cut back to, and again, like from her perspective, she's his therapist, and he is like one of many patients she has. And this guy's wearing a mask because he's paranoid of germs and stuff. You know, like he's just, from her perspective, just this crazy person. But now she's also having visions and just like, what's going on? You know, it must be crazy for her. But we cut back to Father Fred looking at a letter written from Father Tom that he found like under his floorboard. And there are some photos and news clippings about missing kids in a disappearing building. He goes to Doc Sutton's house. He lets in Fred. Like Doc Sutton is the guy in the beard in one of those pictures. He lets in Fred, and his house walls are covered with newspaper clippings about missing kids, missing buildings, the Black Barn, and stuff we can't make out, but the walls are just like covered in them. And he says the town is fighting a war for its soul, and the priest is a newer soldier. End of issue. Any thoughts on that so far?
Well, for anyone that doesn't know, there's been sightings of what they call a grinning man all around. I mean, for decades. Very almost similar to, kind of like the Joker in a way.
Yeah.
In fact, there have been some comparisons made between that and he's just this man, I think in a lot of times in dark clothes, but not always.
Yeah.
And he's just usually staying still, and he's just staring at the person and grinning.
Yeah.
But it's not usually, the person doesn't get a good feeling from that.
Yeah.
That because the grin is just so big, it seems unrealistic.
Yeah. And it's like sometimes kind of tied in with the Hat Man, or even like Slender Man, like aesthetically, or even sometimes seen during like sleep paralysis type moments, and just a real kind of eerie archetype that's kind of in a lot of pop culture, and people see him in real life a lot of times. But also, I think it's gained a lot of fuel because people talk about him now more and more. So issue 4. The issue opens up with some newspaper clippings. Local cut leader arrested. Historian puzzled over rural legend of Black Barn. The Doc Sutton is telling Fred about the history. He says, "It's always been there. Gideon Falls and the Black Barn have always been entwined." This is just a direct quote I took, but the first recorded mention of the barn goes back to 1794. There are records of a building, nothing more than a barn or stable, made of strange dark wood that appears overnight from thin air. Soon after, a series of fires and deaths plagued the early pilgrims. But it's not just some haunted house. It has power, terrible power. In 1969, a local man was arrested for killing 7 teenagers. The police found drawings of the Black Barn filling the walls of his cabin. And there was a bunch more. He says he doesn't actually know what it is, but he knows that it's a thing of evil and it must be stopped. Father Fred says it sounds like nonsense, but Sutton says, like, no, you've seen it. He takes an old picture off the wall and shows it to him. And he goes, this is of the first plowman. This is like, it's crazy. But he says it's what Sutton he says it's what Sutton is. So Sutton says, this is what I am, plowman. And it's what Father Fred is now too. Like, this is what I am. This is also what you are now because you've seen it. It's a quote organization of local men of influence who stood against the darkness of the Black Barn since the turn of the last century. So this like weird Knights Templar fighting, like Knights Templar group of elites from the town fighting against this Black Barn legend. It's crazy. He calls them like the guardians that stand between the Gideon Falls and the Black Barn. He says that Father Tom believed this and he didn't actually kill Jean Tremblay. Father Fred, he said he believes in God, but not science fiction, and that this is all just some crazy mythology. Sutton says again, but you've seen it. And he responds, I don't even know what I saw. And then he asks Sutton if he's ever actually seen it. And he hasn't, but it doesn't mean he doesn't know it exists. He says, what is faith after all, Father Fred? And then it cuts away. And then we cut to Dr. Zhu, looking at old case files of Norton. We find out he has no family and was found in the streets when he was 8. He was placed in a Catholic orphanage and only remembered his first name, but nothing else about himself. He also had early signs of depression and schizophrenia. Dr. Zhu looks exhausted and mentally spent. She washes her face and is then shocked to see the Black Barn in the mirror for a moment, like flashes there. And it's a little confusing visually, like it's tough to like. It's weird. It's trippy looking. Yeah. But it appears that a man kind of comes in and attacks her with a mallet. Is like what the vibe you're supposed to get. But it's like drawn weirdly and shown in the reflection of the mirror. So we cut to Father Fred. So again, I'm laying this out as it was laid out to me, so I don't like spoil anything. But we cut to Father Fred arriving at the police officer's house. He shows her the picture of the articles and pictures he found under Father Tom's floorboard. She basically rolls her eyes and says, she's sick of hearing about this barn. This is the police sheriff to Father Fred. So she says it's all some fake mythology, similar to the one the priest peddles, meaning like Catholicism. So she's like really not into church. We also learned that her husband, quote, died. Like, so a mystery about her husband's death, which we don't really learn that much about, honestly. A few years ago, which seems kind of fishy. She's also interested to learn that her deputy is a plowman, one of these people who fight against the Black Barn, which she claims is just an agricultural club. But Dr. Sutton says is this like secret society of people who believe in the Black Barn. She gets a call about Dr. Zhu and has Fred drive because she's drunk. He goes to her house to show her like all this stuff. But you think it's a call about Dr. Zhu, and then it cuts back, and we cut to the streets where Norton is outside in the rain. He approaches someone, and we see it's Dr. Zhu. So he asks if she's hurt. She says no. We realize that she wasn't actually attacked. She was freaked out because the man we saw in that panel was actually Norton. Like, she had a vision and saw the Black Barn and then Norton like in the mirror, which like visually while you're reading it was trippy, and you didn't really like make that connection. But she's super freaked out and asks like what's happening to her. Like, she's tripping out. As a reader, you're tripping out because you're trying to follow the story. And then we cut to Father Fred and the cop in the police car, and we realize now that the call was actually about shots fired. Like, you're intentionally supposed to not know what's happening. That's like the point I'm trying to make. So you misled. Exactly. Sorry. Yeah. We realized the call was actually about shots fired, at the farm that Fred was just told to visit earlier at the church. So that like bus driver's farm. Um, so the bus driver's name is Joe. So they see Joe's wife, Janet, outside, like all frantic. The cop says, like, "Where's the deputy?" Because they see the deputy's car in the driveway. She goes, Joe made me call. Joe made me call. She's like real freaked out. So Fred and Carla, like the cop, go inside the barn and see Joe sitting there, just like drenched in blood, with a man hanging upside down from the ceiling with like blood dripping down. And he says, like, "I've been waiting for you, Father." And it's like a close up of his face, his face, and then end of issue.
The
What do you
red
think about that?
figure, possibly.
Possibly. We don't know. We don't know what's going on. Crazy stuff so far. Right?
Yeah. Definitely a
Wait,
good horror suspense story, but it's really amazing because it has the paranormal in it in ways, but they're very subtle. It's not super in your face.
Yeah, and I think it gets like as there's 27 issues total in the whole series, and it's like it's done, and all the covers are people's like faces, like heads, but drawn like as like maps, like towns, but they look like people's heads. So I think there's like something about the bond of whatever this dark figure is with the town itself that like isn't, which is what I kind of wanted, like more ley line-y, weird metaphysics with the town, which this first volume didn't really get as much into. But there's cool elements like the therapist having the visions that her patient's having, this like father who doesn't believe, and this like faith that these other townspeople have, and different stuff. We got two more issues to go. How are we doing so far? Is everybody okay in the chat? Like, everybody good?
Just listening. It
Okay,
seems
all right,
like
good.
there's no chat yet. So
Sorry. Are you okay?
doing good. Oh yeah.
Okay.
No, this is
All right.
very, very amazing. And
All right.
yeah, definitely.
Here we go. All right. So we're in Joe's barn. So the cop pulls a gun on Joe, and he hurls this like bloody axe at her, and it hits her, but like seemingly on the blunt end, and she like dropped her gun, so like he didn't like stick her with it, and he says, "Your time is coming, Father, but not yet." And like he runs past Father Fred, like jamming the scalpel in the palm of his hand, as he tries to like, as Father Fred tries to like stop him from getting out the door, and they rush outside after him, and they see his wife Janet like bloody on the ground. She says to the cop, "Saw you inside. You were there," and then passes away, and like we don't know what that means. And it's like, "Saw you inside. You were there," and then so I don't know, who knows what that means. So then they walk through the cornfields looking for Joe, like they're trying to chase him. And they come upon this huge rectangular patch in the field where like this barn would be, but this huge patch mark in the field, big square patch. So they find in the patch this bloody scalpel, but no body, and no sign of anything. They say they need to go see Doc Sutton. We cut back to Norton and Dr. Zoo. She asks how long he's seen the barn, and he says since he was 3 or 4. And we found, like, I think I forgot to mention before, but we found out he had like amnesia. He didn't remember his life when he was found when he was 8. He didn't like he remembered his first name, but that's it. So
Yeah.
But he says he's been seeing the barn though. He remembers that he's been seeing the barn since he was 3 or 4. But he doesn't remember his life. It's all this big blur. It's his life is like a dream. His memories of his life is like a dream. And because of that, he was like very depressed when he was in the orphanage. But what saved his life was discovering this pattern and all the garbage that he was finding. It was like, and he just like discovering that it was the key to finding this barn, and he had a higher purpose. And she asked him like why he wants to find the barn if it's evil. And he says he's not sure, but thinks we'll fix him somehow. And that there's a draw to the barn, like that the barn is a contradiction. He says like it scares you, but it also pulls you in. And he's like, "You feel it too, right?" She's like, "Yeah, or else I wouldn't be here." And then we cut back to Doc Sutton. We cut back to Doc Sutton's house where the sheriff and Fred knock on his door. They come in and he like sews up Fred's hand from getting stabbed. They question him if the scalpel was Doc Sutton's. He said he's definitely sure it's not. So as a reader, we're assuming it's something that was stolen out of Norton's house. She tells him that Joe murdered his wife Janet and the deputy tonight, and now he's nowhere to be found. And all they found was just his flattened field and the bloody scalpel. Sutton then reveals that Sheriff Clara's brother vanished when he was 8, and all they found was a flattened field then. And he, of course, blames the barn. So we learned that the sheriff now, who doesn't believe in the barn, had a brother missing in the same circumstances, who this doc believes is the barn, And she slips and yells at him and calls him dad. So we realize that Doc Sutton is actually her dad. And that she didn't mention that she'd been embarrassed because he lives in this fantasy world. Like she doesn't believe in this stuff, and he thinks that she's just gone crazy. Like he's gone crazy in his house with all these newspaper clippings and stuff. She asks if he thinks Joe could have kidnapped her brother, like way back then. Joe being the guy who just murdered those people.
Okay.
He says he couldn't have, and he's a good man, a plowman, and whatever happened tonight was because the barn made him do it. He then shows her a picture he found in her brother's room way back then, and it was a drawing of the black barn, which was like the one that's underneath the red barn in that picture, like the kid, like the hand drawing. The night before he vanished, he had a nightmare and came into his dad's room, Doc Sutton. He said it was about getting lost and trapped in an old barn. But Sutton was tired that night because of his work or whatever, and told him to just go to bed. And that was the last time he saw her son. I need a drink, sorry.
That's okay. So it seems like the barn it's very amazing. It seems like it's a metaphor for like knowledge.
No, James. James. Oh man. Hold that thought, man. Oh my God, James. I can't believe you just said that. Wow. Wait, okay. All right. Oh my God. I can't believe you just said that. Do you got anything else before I go on? Oh man.
Just the way people are drawn to it, but also afraid of it. Well.
Oh my God, James. That is absolutely crazy that you said that.
Biblical references.
Yeah. Oh man. Wow. Okay. Wow. That's why you're a writer. All right. Wait for this. Okay. So Sutton. We find out that Sutton thinks that his kid was taken by the barn. He had a dream about the barn. So he spared his daughter this knowledge because she was 12 at the time. And then he didn't tell her later in life because it was very clear that she didn't want anything to do with this whole barn mythology that he believed in. But she was like visually upset. She was very mad. And she storms out, says that Fred can be Sutton's new gullible idiot that will go along with all of his delusions, and then leaves. We cut back to Norton and Dr. Zhu. She's hypnotizing him. So like the last time we see them, she's like, "Have you ever been hypnotized?" And then I cut back to Fred. So now we're in his hypnotic regression. So it's just weird dreamscape. It's like weird upside down panels and like huge skies and cityscapes and everything. It's real trippy looking. And she asks him what he sees. He says, "Garbage, lots of garbage." But wait, there's something else. The source of it, the well. And I'm like, what? And we see a pool of water blending into a cityscape, like connecting two panels together. This is like pool of dripping water. And it's like, he calls it the well, the source of it. Like, source waters, water portal reference, James? Like, what? And then she asks him to go deeper into his memories. He's afraid to leave the landfill that he went to as a lost boy. So this landfill is like the reason he's obsessed with trash because he went there as a boy, apparently. So, but she makes him go further. Yeah, he says he sees something that scares him. It's quote, where he came from. It's a vacant lot. She says go to it, but he's scared. So, we just see a few, like 4 different green panels back to back to back. And then he said, "Oh God, there it is. I see it. The door." And then we see like the green panels open up to this like huge red space, this huge red door. This like where the door opens to this reveal like a red space, basically. Like a bright red, like a crazy red. "I see the door. I see the other side," he says. And then we cut to Fred and Sutton. Sutton says that if the door has Joe, then he'll kill again. They have to join the plowmen. Fred still doesn't believe it, basically. They hear something and rush outside looking for Sheriff Clara. So that was the first time they mentioned Clara's name. It was like 5 issues in. It's the first time it's in my notes. We see the panels of Fred running around, intercut with the voice of Norton and his hypnosis talking about the door. So we're like their journeys are kind of paralleling at that point. He says the door to the Black Barn, it's opening now, and when it opens, we'll never be able to stop it. Like as Father Fred is like potentially literally going into this door, you know. So like what we're seeing like is like intercut weird dreamscape with the real world and the like both this red door thing. Again, very like trippy, hard to follow intentionally, and like surreal. I don't know. End of issue. Cut to black. Cut to like hard black, a whole page of black.
Wow.
Anyways, and all right. Any thoughts on that before I go to the last issue?
Just again, the dream, the hypnosis, the dream, the altered states of consciousness, where you can access different things, memories, possibly. Of course, there's debate on that, whether or not that's true or not. I've heard,
Yeah.
or whether it's just allowing you access to other realms, and it's not memories of the past. It's memories that you're actually making in real time.
Yeah, exactly. And potentially like a reason for I didn't even think about this till right now, but potentially a reason for his amnesia was because like we talk about like MK Ultra trauma sometimes and like mental fracturing and trauma that way like potentially he could have had some type of trauma with this Black Barn and his mind just blocked it off for him so that like this could be some type of source of like his initial trauma that he's piecing together as Fred is finding the actual Black Barn in real life, you know.
And again, going back to the information.
Exactly. Wait for this chance. Wait for this. That's crazy. Okay. All right. So ready?
Yes.
All right. All right. So issue 6. We see Norton and Dr. Zoo, who we find out her name is Angie, in the city looking for a place that he saw in his regression. So they go to track down where he came from. And it used to be like this huge industrial dump, and now it's like all new condos and cafes, and it's been real like gentrified. But they're looking for a vacant lot, and she's like, "There's no way there should be a vacant lot here. It's all development now. There's no way to be a random vacant lot in the middle of this luxury housing and stuff." But there is somehow. And then they go to it, and they see this outline of this door, this like flattened door shape, big door shape in the grass, like in the vacant lot. And then like Angie sees it too, and is like stunned by it. He says like he knows what they have to do, and it cuts back to Fred and Dr. Sutton. Sutton is like screaming at Fred to not go into the door. The art is becoming like more and more weird and trippy as he's entering the door, as if like Fred himself is entering some strange realm. There's a full page of this like face with like kind of like shattered panels comprising it. So like a bunch of panels showing the action or like making a face, basically, or like assembling a face, which again is kind of like a fractured mind type thing. As if kind of his mind is being shattered walking into the door somehow. And we see many tiny panels of him searching for Sheriff Clara. As the panels progress, they get more and more surreal and like more and more strange. Like he's almost like descending into hell almost. The page then opens up to this like full color splash page of this like giant contraption. Some weird like Tesla tech type like large energy ball between the coils. Let me try to find that picture. That's worth me posting. I had to just take this like off my lap. Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah. Just real quick, that's what was I gonna say? The panels, that the artwork there definitely. I mean, if it's making up a face, but it's all parts of a face, it's almost like parts of memories.
Yeah. Yes.
Right there.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, and that's what he walks into. That's the contraption, and I really don't even like. We don't get any answers for what that is. We might find that out later on in volume 2, but as right now, we know no idea what that is. Yeah. All right. Lost my place. I'm sorry.
It's okay. This thing, I mean, it obviously has to do with energy of some kind.
Yeah.
Whether it's collecting it or generating it. I mean, it's basically It looks like it has the sphere in the middle with two coils with a coil on either side of it.
Yeah.
Um, again, that's I mean, that's like a symbol, like that's symbolism. The
Yeah.
two poles, the two opposites with the
Exactly. Yeah. That's classic
with,
occult imagery, like the
yeah.
pillars. That's in all the Masonic tracing boards and everything.
I
Um,
mean, even in the middle of this circuit, this orb in the middle, it looks like an eye almost in the middle of it.
yeah. Exactly. Exactly. That's like the Eye of Sauron between like
Yeah,
um. It's exactly it. And again, and it's weird because the panels before that were just this super surreal imagery that like intentionally just like didn't make any sense at all, and then all of a sudden it just opens up to he just in this room with this machine. Like it came out of nowhere. Um, so then Clara then appears out of nowhere saying, "I see you. I see your face. I see all your faces." And she's been like visually like slashed and is like bleeding. We don't know why. He runs away from her. He's like scared. She's scared looking, and he runs away from her and deeper into this like weird psychedelic nightmare scene as she repeats over and over again, "You have secrets in your belly." She says it like 6 times. Um, Fred falls through a door and into a room with a woman in a bed. Rebecca, he says. She asks where he was, and he says he just had the weirdest deja vu. He says, "I can't," and she responds. She goes, "What? You know what?" And it seems like we're in a memory of him breaking up with this woman named Rebecca. But he's still wearing his like priest suit, and he's saying like what he did was wrong. She's made him go against everything that he believes in. Like implying like the relationship. He's a priest. He shouldn't be doing this. And then he sees blood on her and like all over the blanket. And then suddenly she transforms into Clara, the sheriff, bloody in the blanket. And then suddenly she transforms. Again, this is a dreamscape. She transforms. But she's like on the street. She's like just on the ground in her regular clothes on the street. She says, "Behind you," but he's like doesn't know what's going on. Suddenly it cuts out of the dreamscape, and then we see Joe, just with a gun. Hello, Father. Like Joe is the guy who murdered those people. "Hello, Father. You should not have come inside. This place is mine, not yours. He wants me, me." So they're inside the barn. He goes, "Hey, Father, you should not have come. This place is mine, not yours. He wants me, me." We don't know who that is yet. Then there's a ton of intercut panels, really disorienting, of what looks like a struggle, shots firing between Joe and Clara and Fred. Clara seems to have been hit by a bullet in the stomach, which is where the blood was in his dream beforehand. And Father Fred tackles Joe, but it's like very hard to understand. There's like 24 panels, like split in three each. Like it's like three perspectives of the fight cut between 24 panels. It's like really disorienting. And then Fred is tackling Joe, and they fall out of the panel into this like starry space scene. It's like starry universe-scape. And like Fred is falling and falling, and then he passes this like weird. This is where it gets weird. He passes this like weird multiplicity of Jesus, like on the cross. This like weird psychedelic kaleidoscope of like Jesus. And then he says hello, Fred. And Fred asks like, "Where am I?" And he goes, "In the black barn. Where the blank do you think you are?" And we're like, "What the hell is going on? Like, what is happening?" And then this is the conversation between them. He goes, "You need to make a choice." He goes, "This is hope. This is I didn't know this was gonna have any religion in it, so I'm sorry if like that's upsetting to people. But this is just a story again, just a story, like
it's fiction.
just
Yeah,
just fiction. Um, so Jesus to Fred, you need to make a choice. A choice about what? What? The answers to everything. ... Or saving her. And he goes, "Why can't you help me? Because you don't believe in me anymore. Without your faith, I'm nothing. It's up to you now." And then he's like faced with this choice between an old TV and a teddy bear. Again, in this weird dreamscape. He says like choice, but like so he's given a choice, the answers to everything, or saving her. So again, this knowledge change. So we see a giant face of Joe, just like the murderer, in the dreamscape, saying, "Wrong choice, Father." After he chooses the bear. Don't you know what he could have had? the answers. You could have had the answers. You could have had everything that we were all looking for. But it wouldn't give them to us. It said only you. He was like shocked and betrayed that he chose the teddy bear over the answers. He's saying this like as the panels are like slipping by, and like Joe was attacking, punching Fred, and the panels like kind of dripping away. Don't you want to know what it really is? Like as he like punches Fred, so he's like going berserker, being like, "Why didn't you choose the answers? Like we're this whole cult going crazy trying to find this knowledge of what's going on. You could have had it, and you said you want to save her life instead, and he just blown away by it." And Fred Fred said he's insane, but Joe responds, "There's no such thing." Fred wrestles the gun away from him and shoots him and kills him. Fred runs over to the dying Sheriff Clara. She says, "Danny, where's Daniel?" And you're assuming that's her brother's name, but you don't know yet. She's disoriented. Doc Sutton runs up, almost at the end, almost done. Doc Sutton runs up and takes care of Clara, her daughter, his daughter. As Father Fred goes for Sutton's supplies to like stitch her back up, and then we see the teddy bear like on the ground, kind of symbolic to like he saved her basically as like the panel is shifting. And then it cuts to a different day in the hospital. Fred tells her she's lucky her dad was there. She agrees, revealing they're on speaking terms again. When Fred asks what Clara remembers, she basically recounts the whole struggle, says everything that happened, and then says she could have sworn she saw her brother, but doesn't remember seeing the barn. And is disappointed that like the father even asked if she saw the barn. She's like, "Oh no, not you too," and meaning like she basically like didn't remember being inside the barn, didn't remember the whole barn interaction. Remembered everything else. Had another vision about her brother, but the barn was like not in her memory. And then she was upset about it. She's like, "Oh, I thought I found the Watson to my Sherlock Holmes. Like I have a new case." And he's like, "What's a case about what?" She's like, "I gotta find my brother," who's now she's like convinced is alive out there somewhere. We cut to Father Fred outside. He gets a frantic, concerned call from that bishop guy, but like still kind of creepy. Like, "You were right. You were right." Basically, surprised he's alive. Kind of is the vibe you get. And Fred says, like, "You know what this barn is, don't you?" And the bishop says, I know you're exactly where you need to be. Stay vigilant." That's all we get from him. And then we cut to Norton and Dr. Zoo, Angie. Angie now believes Norton. She says that he knows what they have to do. They have to transport all these broken pieces of collected garbage and bring them to this vacant lot. He says she knows it too. They have to do this. As he says this, he takes his medical mask off for the first time so far in the whole 6 issues. Kind of symbolic that he's kind of made a breakthrough and taken off a layer of paranoia and anxiety, basically. And then there's a quote like at the end. It's the last thing in the issue. Quote: "The Black Barn. We're going to build it, and you're going to help me, even if it's the last thing we do." ... And as it fades out on the cityscape, like it fades out on a whole like shot of a city, with a sign reading Gideon Falls, population 4,600,000. So like, what do you think is a small town? Is this a massive city? That's it. That's the first volume.
That's amazing. Now there were a couple things in there that gave me hints of like time travel, time being. And I'm wondering if that has to do with that device.
Yeah, these events. I didn't even think about that till right now, but that in my head I was assuming that these are happening. These two storylines were happening concurrently, just in two different parts of Gideon Falls. But now, after you saying that, like one could be 20 years prior, for all we know, like,
right,
which is interesting, and kind of the Black Barn being this like nexus point where these different places can kind of bleed together, I don't know.
Have to have a building there,
yeah,
to be able to access that place,
yeah,
or that kind of other space kind of thing,
yeah.
So
what did you think? You like it? It's complicated.
It was, but it was amazing. And again, just the symbolism in it. I mean, just the Yeah, no, it was good.
It seems like it was all over the place, the notes, but I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I these were as good a notes as a person could have taken for the story. It was like it was complicated because that was how the story was supposed to be, kind of like that was a ride that I took too, kind of.
Yeah. No,
Um,
that's perfect. That's
but
good.
I'm sorry for my rambly tone, but that wasn't because of the book. That was just because like it's tough to explain a comic book kind of sometimes. But
Yeah, well, because it's the audio. You're trying to use audio to describe visual, and it's just
yeah, exactly,
it's always
exactly,
going to be a bit awkward, especially in a case like this where there's no pre-established. It's not
yeah,
Wolverine,
exactly.
Captain America, or Superman, or
Yeah, that's
Wonder
the
Woman.
toughest part. Yeah, exactly, exactly. And you don't even know the names. Like he doesn't give you any information. These are just characters you recognize by their faces as you're reading it. And then I find the names out of like two of the four main characters at the last issue, last two issues of the story. But I might keep reading. I don't know. I don't own volume two, which the next six issues. It might not be a good one to cover on the pod probably, unless people really like it for some reason. But I might keep reading it. I want to see where it goes, kind of personally. But yeah, it was
Yeah.
fun.
The other thing, the bishop. I was thinking
Yes,
more a
yes.
negative thing, but it could be something more neutral
It,
or
it, could it could
positive.
be
Yeah.
like the vibe in the beginning was definitely he's leaving you out to dry. He's leaving you out to be sacrificed to this black barn basically. And
Right.
then when he calls, kind of he's frantic in the beginning, but it seems like a faux concern, kind of like he's like,
So
oh
yeah,
wow, you're okay. Like I thought you were gonna be dead, basically. But he kind of leaves it on more of a neutral term, more of like a not necessarily evil, but kind of like religious fanatic type, just knows some
yeah,
type of dark cosmic knowledge that we don't know about. So right now, you know,
that or that could just be. I mean, that seems like kind of a common line you would have
yeah,
for someone in that situation. Yeah, I would say very least neutral, leaning on negative, but
yeah.
definitely someone that has knowledge and plans and is a lot
Knows more
more
than he's letting
aware.
on. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, of things than he wants anyone to think.
yeah. And like the vibe you're left with definitely is supposed to be that Father Fred can't trust this guy, basically. That like
Right.
he's gonna want to learn more information from him. So like, and he's his boss. So like, don't upset him, but also don't trust this guy, and he's gonna lead you astray. Because he could have just easily Father Fred could be he just as easily been dead, you know.
Right.
Um,
Now,
but
there's one other thing I noticed with the story. It
yeah,
has there are some similarities between this and parts of the Dark Tower, Stephen King's Dark Tower
yeah,
story.
yeah,
You have the priest who is not perfect,
yeah,
who becomes part of it later on in the story, but still is there.
yeah.
You have this central object or place or both that is driving a lot of this.
Yeah,
And you have these,
this
you
possible
know,
nexus region. Yeah,
yeah. And
yeah,
then you have these groups of people that are associated with it for various reasons.
yeah.
It's just, yeah. I mean, not that it's a one to one, but there's
No,
definitely
no, it's
shades
close.
of
Yeah,
King in there, I
yeah,
think.
yeah. And I want to learn more about who this dark figure is. Like we know that this Black Bar now is potentially this like doorway that pops up. I don't know, leads to negative places, potentially leads to somewhere dark. But there's this figure who's the like Joe says like he should have chose me. He should have chose me. Like I don't think he's referring to Jesus. I don't think Jesus in that story was was Jesus. I think it was just like the father saw what he was going to see because he's a priest, you know. But
Yeah.
the
Imagery.
dark, like, yeah, the imagery, yeah. But there's like a there's a some type of and then like I was looking for artwork for it in like some of the later issues. There's like a dark silhouette in a lot of them, so I think there's like a dark figure that will appear later on in the story. That's kind of possibly pulling the string, like some type of like controller of the dark barn or I mean the black barn or whatever. I don't know, some intriguing stuff that I might want to keep going on. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
definitely.
don't know. Yeah.
Well, thank you for going through all that work. I really do appreciate it.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Thanks for
And
tolerating, listening to it, and thanks everybody for being patient and making it as far as You did if you're still here. But that was fun.
Yeah, we've been on for about an hour. Can you believe
Oh,
that?
nice.
Yeah,
All right. I'll mute up now. But thanks again, James. It was always fun being on.
no problem. Thank you for being on with me as always, and we'll be you'll be hearing more from Derek in future shows, comic book
Definitely.
shows, and other shows. Some a round table here or there. So thank you,
Definitely.
Derek. Take care, and I'll talk to you next time. And I'll
Later,
end the show
James.
here
Later,
in a
everybody.
minute.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem. So yeah, so that's it for tonight. I'll be back tomorrow with true paranormal stories from the web. Talk to you all then on the next episode of Salcedo Paranormal. Take care, everyone.